Welcome to the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we dive into the fundamentals of readiness for life's challenges, covering topics from personal responsibility to mental and physical preparedness and beyond. Let's forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility on the journey to the well prepared life. Well, hey, welcome to episode 5 of the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility. This week, we're going to be talking about integrity and kind of this idea of like, what do you do when no one's looking? But yeah, I'm Nathan, and this is Kyle across from me, and we get to share life together and do this and talk about this. One thing that I want to start doing is if you enjoy this content and you think it's helpful for you, I want you to subscribe on YouTube or podcast, whatever platform you're experiencing this on, and I want you to engage with the content that you see. That's going to help us get better reach to more people and hopefully help people figure out what it looks like to live this well-prepared life. So getting into integrity, Kyle, we have this definition written down. Can you read off the definition of integrity and what this is the American Heritage Dictionary and what it says integrity is?
Yeah. So, American Heritage Dictionary defines it as steadfast adherence to a strict moral or ethical code. It's the state of being unimpaired. It's soundness, the quality or condition of being whole or undivided, completeness. So it's a wholeness, state of quality being entire, complete, unbroken state. So it's one whole, complete being.
Yeah. Okay.
So why integrity? Why are we talking about that?
Yes, I think it is something that builds great off of our last episode. So last episode, we talked about the ideas of self-ownership and personal sovereignty. And it's kind of this idea as far as that you're in charge of yourself and that nobody can make decisions for you. And so if we're looking at that, nobody can make decisions for you. Well, how do you make decisions?
Right.
What are the informing factors, and what happens when you're like, I want to blame somebody else, but I really can't blame anybody else. It's on me. Mm-hmm. Well, how do I want to live then? Okay. And so integrity is I feel like the natural follow-up to that of, okay, so I know that I own my own decisions now. So what do I do with that? Okay. And I would argue and say that it is worth it. And it is something that you should pursue to be a man of integrity. Okay. Or to be a person of integrity. Okay. Because in a world where there is brokenness and things that aren't whole and things that are just falling apart, people of integrity are people that you can rely on, that are dependable, and that can help put things back together. Because, and I'm not saying that you have to be perfect or that you can't have brokenness in your life. We all have brokenness in our life, but it's recognizing that brokenness and being able to work through it in a way that actually is beneficial to you and others, and it doesn't destroy or hurt others. I think people that aren't in integrity don't do that well. Yeah. I think they continue a cycle of breaking things versus bringing healing. That's good. So that's why I think it's important. Okay. So in kind of looking at what that looks like practically, I think one of the first steps, kind of going off that first line item of being steadfast adherence to a strict or moral ethical code, I think somebody of integrity has to have principles and a moral standard. Okay. And so I think that's this first essential thing. And so this idea of principles is that you have things that you believe and you stand on that inform how you make decisions. And it's not just based off of what the latest news article said or the latest social media fad is. Right. You have something that you stand on that is how you base your life, make decisions. And I think that goes hand in hand with a moral standard.
I like that. That's good. So you're you are a complete being, and then this other stuff is just on the outside. You're filtering everything through who you are. Is that one way of looking at it
through what you believe?
Through what you believe.
And so the principles, the moral standard are what you believe. I do think it's important with the idea of a moral standard that it is outside of yourself. That you don't discover or come up with your own moral standard.
That's fair.
Because what happens when your moral standard comes into conflict with somebody else's moral standard? Yeah. When you think it's right for, I'm trying to think of a good example here that's actually realistic. I can think of outrageous examples easily. But, sure. Yeah. But here's a good example right now that feels outrageous to say, but it's actually happening, is when you think it's okay with these there's communities in urban areas that go in and they just steal everything off the shelves, and they feel morally justified in doing that
because the corporation is profiting, so they can
for whatever reason. For whatever reason, the reason doesn't really matter in this situation, but they have a moral standard that allows them to just steal stuff off the shelves of stores.
Yeah,
but that's in conflict with the moral standard of the store owner.
Yeah, right.
Who's like, no, I'm in charge of this. You're stealing my property and the things, my livelihood, and so. If you have those things, like those things are going up against each other. And you now have a situation where it's like you have moral standards that are in opposition to each other. And that's why I think it's so important to have a moral standard that's outside of somebody's personal moral standard.
Yeah.
And you and I, like, we agree on this, where it's like our moral standard is based on the Bible and what Jesus says in the Bible. And I think that is the best one. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah. But that's what we try to base our lives off. And obviously we don't live perfectly in that.
Right.
But I do think that it is the best way to live. And so we try to base our lives on that moral standard. And even if you don't believe in Jesus as Lord, there are so many people like, oh yeah, he's a great teacher.
Right.
We think he's much more than that.
Yeah. But at the very least.
But at the very least,
right.
What he said and the standard that he called people to is still good.
Still pretty solid.
Yeah. Whether or not you believe in him as Lord, which we do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So principles, good standards.
Yeah.
Being whole and complete, not changing in the world.
Yeah.
I guess.
And that's the other thing with having something outside of yourself, of you change all the time.
Yeah.
A good moral standard does not change.
Right.
And so it stays the same. It's consistent. It aligns with truth and reality.
Yeah.
And it is something that when you realize that you're going away from it, you're like, oh, I need to come back to this. Not something that just goes with you.
Yeah. You have a center point you can, like a compass. Back to that conversation. Yeah.
So the next idea is kind of based off the the way I put it is that somebody that is a person of integrity is not easily swayed.
Okay.
And what I mean by this is they know when they know what's right, they don't allow people to convince them to do what's wrong. Again, it's going back to that moral standard and the idea of principles. But you can have a moral standard and then not live by it. Yeah. So the next step in being a person of integrity is, okay, so you have your moral standard. Right. Now you got to actually like live it out.
Yeah. Walk the walk, so to speak.
Yeah. And so that's what I would say this next step is like, okay, do you actually live by the moral standard that you claim to hold?
Yeah.
Because actually I would make the argument, if you don't live by it, you don't actually believe it.
That's true.
Because our belief informs our action in most situations, almost all, where it's like we act based on what we believe. Like you have the classic chair example of like you sit down in the chair because you believe it will support you.
Right. Right.
Like, and you wouldn't if you didn't think it would.
Yeah.
And so the same way, it's like, are you going to do the hard right thing even when it's hard because you believe it's actually best? Or are you going to do the easy bad thing?
Yeah.
Just because, like, and for easy example as far as like is the idea of like laziness.
I don't know, because that's tough, because I could see it like, I believe that working out and eating well is good for me, but I don't do it enough. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
So it's like, I do believe it's true. I know it's true, but I don't live it out. So that's an interesting thing. It's like, do I believe it actually? You know?
Oh, I think the argument that I would say is with that is you don't believe it's best.
That's fair. Yeah.
What you think is best is comfort right now.
That's fair. Yeah. Truly deep down, I think it's,
Yeah. You would rather be comfortable, fat and happy right now than go to the gym and work
fat, dumb, and happy. Right?
And I think that's a lot of us is that we would rather take the easy way and eat the junk food. Like even like, to be honest, today I had a couple Cokes and one of our people, she's being so kind and gracious, but she stocks a snack cart for our staff and Pop-Tarts are right on top.
Come on.
And I'm a sucker for some Pop-Tarts. And I'm like, I know I shouldn't be eating these Poptarts.
It's pure sugar.
It's so hard to not just, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. Let me just grab one.
Strawberry.
Strawberry or blueberry.
Okay. Okay.
The only ones I'm not a fan of are like the brown sugar and cinnamon.
You don't like those?
No.
Oh, man.
Not a fan.
I like those toasted.
They're okay.
Yeah.
But it's like definitely strawberry or blueberry.
Yeah.
Blueberry was a sleeper though for me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think I liked it, and then we were out of strawberry, and I grabbed one. I'm like, I'll give this a shot. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. But yeah, so you can see how many times I've had these that I know the difference. But that's like a lack of self-control on my part, and that I am not living according to like what I think is true.
That's true.
I should eat healthy and work out and live a healthy life, and instead I allow a moment to, like I in that area recently, and some days are better than others. So that's where it's also like it's not 100%. It is not I am good at this 100% of the time, even though to be in integrity, I have to do it 100% of the time.
Yeah.
There's an element like sometimes I'm better at that than others.
Okay.
And so sometimes I'm like, nope, I'm not going to have a Pop-Tart.
Yeah.
And other days I have 3.
Yeah.
Like, and I got to recognize that when I'm living out of integrity, and the right thing to do is go back to truth.
Okay.
And not just be like, no, it's fine that I do that.
Yeah. I like that. So I've always thought of integrity as like, I do the same thing when no one's watching.
Yeah.
And same thing in front of other people.
I can tell you, I'm not like trying to like broadcast that I'm having Pop-Tarts to
people. That's fair. I never thought of it as like your own personal moral code. You're not adhering to your own beliefs your own moral standards.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't even think about that.
I think that's a great way to think about it. Because it's like you're out of integrity with yourself if you are not living according to the thing that you think is right.
Right. That's good.
And so you're not complete and whole. You are out of integrity if you're living that way.
That's good.
I feel like all these things just build on each other. But the next thing I have written down is this idea of consistency.
Okay.
And this kind of what you said as far as the same person when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
So there's consistency in the sense of you're reliable, and that's good, and that's a part of it. But the consistency that, like for me, if I were to live in better integrity than I am right now, I would, like right now, I would say like, if I'm walking through the like reception area where those Pop-Tarts are with somebody, I'm much less likely to grab one than when I'm walking through it by myself and nobody else is there.
Just the feeling of someone else seeing you do that?
Yeah, and so that's me living outside of integrity. Like in that area, I'm like, I'm not living in integrity. But the consistency element of it is, if I was to be truly consistent, I would say no every time, whether or not somebody was there with me.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, and that applies, and like this, we're using Pop-Tarts as an example because it's real and like I'm sure that I'm not the only person that struggles with it. Like when I worked a different job, like vending machines and all the stuff that they have in them that's terrible for you. But it could also be watching YouTube at work, especially on the weekends, like binging stuff where you're just wasting time.
Yeah.
And not that watching TV is bad, but if you watch 12 hours straight of TV, I would say that's probably not a healthy thing.
Right. Yeah.
So like, I want to be like, hold both things well in balance as far as like rest is good. Binging is not necessarily as good.
Right. Gotta have a good balance, like you said. Yeah.
But yeah. So it's that, but like, and like, do people know that you like, say you are that person who watches an entire TV series in one weekend, which I have been that person. There was my summer after graduating high school, I finished, I think 3 or 4 different TV series.
In one summer.
So let me put it this way. And like the average like seasons, seasons in each of these series is between like 8 and 12 seasons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I finished 4 of those.
Wow.
And so like, so I've been that person.
Yeah.
That every night I watched some type of TV show from like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. and then got up for work at 7 and it sucked.
Oh, man. That is brutal.
Yeah. So I lived that way for like a whole summer. It was not good. But,
okay.
But so it's like, I say that coming from a place where it's like, I have been there. Thankfully, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like that is, but I know that I'm capable of it. And so I have to watch out for it.
Yeah.
And so in trying to be consistent, I have to like really be on guard. Crazy thing with this, it was just totally unplanned. And I actually like, believe me that it is yesterday on Sunday at church, our pastor taught a message on integrity. And I was like, oh, great, Kyle, take notes because this is great. One of the things that he said, and let me pull it up the picture because I want to get the quote right. But one of the things that he said is we cannot be surprised that the burden of integrity is a battle with yourself.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And so it's a battle.
Yeah.
It's not
That's
easy.
good.
I have to be on guard to stay in integrity.
Yeah, I was kind of like, are you sure you didn't know about this ahead of time? Are you sure you're not just, pulling one on me? But it's pretty crazy coincidental.
Yeah. I literally was like reading through, I helped make some of the teleprompter scripts, like the stuff so he can keep on his notes. And I was reading through, so I'm like, wow, that's very similar to what we're talking about, which is also encouraging to be like, okay, cool. Like
it's pretty neat.
without asking, agreeing with somebody that I respect and listen to.
Yeah.
About like how integrity works and kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, so the same in private as you are in public. The next step in this that I have is kind of this idea of like no skeletons.
Yeah.
You hear the classic term. Well, I mean, even with this, as far as like, how many people have you known? And our pastor talked about this too, where it's like somebody gets popular and then something comes up in their past and they get canceled.
Right.
So a person of integrity, I'm going to say this loosely because it's like the cultural aspect of it makes it more challenging. But a person of integrity might get canceled for something they did or said, but not because it was wrong necessarily. It might just be out of line with what culture thinks is right.
Okay. What if it was years ago though?
Oh.
Because with growth, because I could think of some things I've done that would have gotten very canceled.
True. I think even in that, a person of integrity isn't losing sleep over that.
That's fair, because it's like so far ago you've grown so much. You're like, okay, I've forgiven.
Yeah,
been forgiven,
and it's like
whatever.
so that would be a sucky situation from a public perspective.
Yeah,
but a person of integrity has dealt with those issues.
That's fair. That's good.
And they've typically, I would say, in most situations, it'd be almost never / very few times when they've not already talked with people about those things.
Yeah.
So it's like not only have they personally worked through them, they've also like brought those things into the light. To where they're not skeletons in the closet anymore.
Right.
They are things that other people know about them.
Right. The people that matter know about them. Maybe the common, you know, whatever.
Like they're not necessarily broadcasting it, but core people in their life know about them and they've dealt with that. So when something like comes out, they're like, that sucks.
Yeah.
But I've like worked through this.
Yeah.
And I'm okay.
It's not who I am anymore. Not who I am anymore.
And so a person of integrity can deal with things being brought up from their past because they've already worked through the things in their past.
That's good.
And so it's like you may get canceled in the sense of like, oh, you did something really stupid as a high schooler or a young college student.
Right.
And it got brought out. But I think internally, at the very least, you know how to deal with that and you can work through that in a healthy way. And I do think it lowers your chances of being canceled. I don't think it eliminates them, but I do think it lowers it. Yeah. Because, I mean, so say like, I'm trying to think of like a good example for this. I'm just going to keep it more generic because I can't think of a good example. But say you did do something stupid in high school, but you've already talked about that. And say you're like in the biggest, most like public way, you're running for some type of public office and you talk about that thing that you did that was stupid from the stage publicly.
Yeah.
You've just like taken away the people's power over you with that thing.
That's true.
Because you've just said, I know about this. I'm putting it out there in the open. You can't use this over me because it's already out there.
Right. There's
no blackmail of I got this thing on you involved anymore.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
So kind of the last like point as far as principle that I have. So I have these principles as far as like you have principles in moral standard. You're not easily swayed. You're consistent. You don't have skeletons in your closet. But this idea of character, and this again goes back to that moral standard. So again, everything is building off of each other here. Of you're above reproach, and what that means is that how you live life, other people can't they can't reasonably question your motives. And I say that reasonably on purpose in the sense that some people might be like, you must be up to something behind the scenes or just trying to work something out. But it's like, but if they really look at your life, you're living consistently enough over a long enough time period that there's like, they might be able to ask that question and you could be like, no, this is who I am. I'm a man of character.
Yeah.
I live in a moral and upright way.
These are my values. These are my beliefs.
Yeah. And that comes from consistency over time.
That's good.
That you have that. And you can be a person of character in a short amount of time. Like you can start that process, but like what really shows character is living that way for a long period of time.
Okay. I'm thinking about like job interviews, how that helps out with this. So let's say, cause something that John brought up yesterday at the sermon was imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And it's like how if you have imposter syndrome, if you live with integrity, you can address those fears or those insecurities and then kind of neglect them kind of thing. Or not neglect them or I guess address them.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of like in job interviews, how does integrity help with that, with work performance, job interviews, resumes?
With somebody that doesn't know you, probably not that much.
Okay.
But it sure helps your references.
That's good. Yeah.
So you're hoping, like, if you're a person of integrity, you want them to call your references.
So it doesn't happen up front. It takes some time to build that integrity.
And, in the sense of like, so if you're hiring, you're like kind of being cold hired for a job or cold interview where it's like, you've never met the people in the company. You don't have somebody in there vouching for you. It's just you and the interviewee HR person that you're interviewing with.
Yeah.
Like hopefully they're checking your references.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously, like, I think being a person of integrity is you don't lie on your resume.
I was going to say, that's one thing. You don't lie in the interview. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't lie in any of those situations. So you stay consistent and like hold that moral standard of not lying there.
That's good.
So yeah, I don't think that means that I think like you still use good resume practices of like using the language in their hiring model for what you put in your resume. So you do all the normal things.
As long as it fits.
But yeah, and it's like, you're like, yeah, what I did matches up with that. I'm gonna put it in there that same way.
Yeah.
So that their AI systems are more likely to pick it up.
Right.
But yeah, so you don't lie on your resume. You don't lie in your answers to interview questions. And it's like you lean heavily on your references.
That's good. Using references.
Because like if you've been consistent over time and a person of character, your references are going to call that out.
Yeah.
And they're going to point it out and be like, oh no, you can't miss hiring this guy.
Yeah.
Because he is like solid.
That's something my boss, a mentor, I guess years ago, has always said is make sure you have a good reputation. You know, I think, was it Peyton Manning said you could build your whole lifetime building a reputation, one instant can break it.
Yeah.
So like that word of mouth, that reputation.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It helps. Yeah. And integrity helps with that directly.
Now, and the integrity of that helps with that. Here's what I would caution people against is being careful to not let your reputation be the God to where you're not actually doing that behind the scenes. And you're like, I just need people to see me this way.
I see.
Because that's not a person of integrity. That is putting on a show.
Right. Yeah.
And so, so you need to be a person of integrity. It's like you have people. That's why I actually love the idea of like personal references on job applications outside of just business references.
Okay.
Now I think like it should lean towards business. Like if they're asking for 3 references, at least 2 of them should be like some type of business related. But to have like a personal like friend reference on there is not a bad idea. Now it's like you have to be careful with that one as a hirer and job as employer, because
totally biased.
Well, it's biased, but also it's like you could just tell somebody, it's like, hey, I put you on as a reference, lie for me.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
And that's an option.
You can kind of feel that out though if you got a person talking to you.
And it really depends. Some people, yes. Some people.
If it's a form, maybe, but
but some people are just good liars.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's just something you got to recognize, and you got to do your due diligence to try to work around those situations and like recognize that some people are not going to live integrity. They are going to lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah.
And they are going to try to like manipulate things for their benefit.
Yeah.
And that some people just will do that.
Yeah.
Because like as we believe, people aren't perfect,
right,
and they're not naturally leaning towards good.
Yeah.
And so like people will, in a lot of circumstances, tend towards doing things that are selfish and benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the flip side, it's like you got to do your due diligence to make sure that you're living that way, but then also the people that you want to like interact with in your life are living that way as well.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah. So next kind of idea is this idea of like, okay, so we talked about these ideas as far as like what does it mean practically to live this way? Well, what are the implications of living that way?
Yeah.
So
besides work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of work, inside of work, personal life. But in this idea as far as like, okay, so you've said you have your principles and morals. You aren't easily swayed. You're consistent. You have skeletons. You have character. Mm-hmm. And then you're on your timesheet. You're filling that out at work. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I needed 40 hours, but I only got like 38. I think I can just add 15 minutes a day.
Yeah. Bounce it up, round it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And you like my employer trusts me. I'll get 42 hours next week.
Yeah.
Like it'll even out.
Bounces out. Yeah.
You're like, that's not a man of integrity.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's not living and working the way that you've said you want to.
Right.
Yeah. Like I think for like personal life and stuff like that, where it's like, I'm telling people I'm working out regularly, but I only went to the gym once this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. The first one is like definitely lying.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a better one.
But I'm working out. I've been working out recently.
I've been hitting the gym again.
I've been hitting the gym, getting in the gym some. I'm trying to be pretty consistent. And if somebody were to ask you, well, how many times have you been this week?
Yeah,
you're like once.
Right.
You're like, hold on, that's not. I'm working out. That's I went to the gym once this week.
So it's not just. It doesn't have to be lying. It's overselling it too.
Yeah.
Kind of giving a false perception.
Yeah, it's you're presenting yourself in a way that's not actually how you're living.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I like have to be careful of that because I have been trying to get back into the gym and I've been pretty consistent, some weeks more than others. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, am I living consistently in this way that I can say I'm working out regularly?
Yeah.
And I think I am. But I do have, I'm like on the edge enough that I have to be like, I'm not working out like 5 days a week, but I am doing like at least 3.
Yeah. That's good
right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's still healthy and good. I'm working out what I would say regularly.
I'd say 3 or 4. That's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I'd say that's.
But as far as like, the quantity doesn't matter, but am I in integrity in saying I work out regularly? I'd say yes right now, but I think where I got ahead of myself at times is I would like start working out and I'd be like, oh, I'm like working out.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how long? 1 week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd started working out.
Just started. Yeah.
I haven't been working out. I started working out.
Yeah.
And so I catch myself. Like, so when I did that, I think like after our kid came, I had like a few weeks obviously where I didn't work out, just trying to figure out life and do that well.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, so I was like cautious to be like, yeah, I'm starting to work out again.
Yeah.
And it's like slow going because some mornings I can because she is sleeping and I can get up early and go. And other mornings she wakes up early and I have to help Tara take care of her.
Yeah.
So there's where it's like just this element of like, yeah, no, I got to be honest about where I'm at.
Yeah. A big thing is eating healthy.
It's
like, yeah, I'm eating pretty healthy. We're cooking at home, but then I have like a pint of ice cream in the fridge and half of it's gone in one night, So, or a case of Oreos is all of a sudden empty after the week. So.
Yeah. And I think to be a man of integrity requires that you like actually think about how you present yourself. Also, just the blanket statement of like, you can't be a person of integrity and lie, cheat, or steal.
You can't.
Like you can't.
Yeah. Okay.
If you are lying and you are cheating,
right.
Like if you're cheating the system or just like actually trying to like cheat in games or like, and some people take that. I don't want to get too like if you play with your family and part of the game is how much can I get away with? Like, I'm like, okay.
Like that game BS. Like,
like,
part of the game is the lie.
Yeah. So it's like, so if it's like that, I want to stay with the principle of it and not get into like details that don't actually matter.
About cheating on your taxes. Like that's, you can't really do that. Be integrity.
But yeah, it's like, you can't lie to people consistently and be a person of integrity. And stealing is like hurting other people. And it's like, and like stealing is a little bit more of a gray area as far as like what's your moral standard. But again, going back to morals, like if you have a strict moral and ethical standard and you're stealing, you're probably not living within that moral standard. So again, can't be those things.
What about stealing from the rich, giving to the poor? That's still stealing. Still stealing. Yeah.
Doesn't change the fact that you're stealing.
Yeah. That's right. Even if they're
the principle remains the same.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Just because somebody, even if you don't like how somebody got what they have, it doesn't make it right for you to take it from them.
That's good.
Like, you don't have to like how somebody got what they had. Yeah. And there's something, so if somebody did lie, cheat, and steal to get what they have, that's when you pursue legal options.
Okay.
It's like if they defrauded people.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if they like committed fraud, you pursue legal options to remedy that situation. You don't just steal from them back.
Right. Yeah. You always don't make it right.
Yeah. And so yeah, no, that's definitely.
That's good. That's good to clear that up.
But yeah.
So how do you maintain a life of integrity? Because you said it's it's very hard to maintain that wholeness.
Yeah.
How do you make that happen?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Just to look at that quote again.
The battle within.
Well, and Jonathan in the sermon yesterday, he talked about it. It's like it takes discipline.
Yeah.
And he defined discipline as this, which I really like this definition. But he said discipline is saying no to what I want now, so I can say yes to what I want most.
That's good.
So saying no to what I want now, so I can say yes to what I want most.
It's like sleeping in or getting up early to go to the gym.
Yeah.
It's like
And so it takes, and like going back to the other quote, as far as like, you shouldn't be surprised when it's a battle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So it's going to take effort.
It's going to take a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And that's where it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Just like if you struggle with being a person that is like that lacks confidence, and is like insecure, when you live in integrity, you're like, no, I don't have like you can have logical reason to like combat that insecurity.
Yes.
Where it's like you're like, no, I am doing what I want to do. Right. I'm being consistent. I am being reliable. I have this standard that I'm like seeking to live towards. And while I may not be perfect all the time, I am shooting for this goal.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you can use those things to combat the internal voice in your head and be like, no, get out of here. You're saying I'm worth nothing. And that's, again, the worth thing is like intrinsic value, that worth doesn't come from what we do, but who we are.
Yeah.
So that's like the first worth thing. But as far as you say, I'm not good at anything. Well, it's like, no, I'm good at being consistent.
Yeah.
I'm good at being reliable. And I'm learning.
Yeah. That's good. A coworker, I was talking to a coworker. I was like, man, I feel like I'm not on pace with everybody else. And he's like, Well, yeah, I feel like you're doing pretty good. What's going on? And I was like talking about it, and it's like there's another coworker who's been doing it for 40. I don't know. He's 40 years, about to retire.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not going to have 40 years of experience when you've only been doing it for 10 years. So, like give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Cut yourself some slack. You'll get there someday. But you're doing all right for where you're at now. So it's kind of, I think a comparison, not having comparison helps you with integrity too. Focus on your own morals, your own, journey, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think competition can be very good, but comparison is not.
Okay.
And I don't even know how I'm trying to
competition to kind of sharpen one another.
Yeah. Well, I'd say so here's what I think I land with the idea of comparison of, you should compare against people that are better than you.
Should compare against people who are better than you.
Yeah.
You should.
You should in some situations. And I'm
why is that?
And not broadly, not value, not worth, not in that area.
Which is skill.
But in the area as far as if you want to grow, you should look to the people that are better than you. And you shouldn't call yourself a hot shot when you have people that are better than you.
I like that. It keeps you humble.
Yeah. So
what about the spiral though? Because I feel like you could spiral into like a imposter syndrome. Like, oh man, what? I'm not a guitar player. I can't play like John Mayer.
So and this is so a lot of people actually wouldn't agree with the statement that I just made as far as that you should compare yourself to people that are better than you.
Yeah.
Because what I am very against is compare yourself to people that are worse than you.
I don't like that. Yeah. That's prideful, cocky.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm so much better than them.
Right. Right.
No, that's terrible.
Then you stop growing because then you kind of rest on your merit.
And so I do think there's a place for being like, oh no, I have something say you think you've maxed out, and then you see somebody that's light years ahead of you. You're like, no, I got room to grow.
That's good.
I can go further.
Yeah.
And I think there's a healthy way to do this of you don't place your value into where how much better or worse they are than you. Okay. It's more so of I would say in the area of skills that this is where that applies the most.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That applies in the areas of skills.
Specifically like hobbies, skills, work, whatever kind of. Yeah.
I think there is something to be said though for being challenged by people who are consistent.
Okay.
As far as that person, he's just always reliable.
Yeah.
He's always on time.
Yep.
And people ask him for something and he always gets it to him when he says he does.
Yeah.
I want to be like that.
Yeah. That's good. Good quality.
And using people, I would say when your comparison is inspiring, that's when it's helpful. But if your comparison is something that makes you feel terrible or makes you look down on other people, you need to be really careful. So I'd say you should try to be inspired by others, but you shouldn't necessarily. I think we're processing here. We're thinking.
Yeah.
Do this to kind of revise my earlier statement. I think you should be inspired by others, but not necessarily compare yourself to them.
I'd agree with that.
And then from the comparison thing, kind of what you were saying, as far as I think the best comparison you can make is to yourself. As far as I can say, okay, I was here yesterday and here I am today, and then spread that out as far as weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
As far as I'm so much better than I was.
Focus on who you are. Yeah.
And then also the hard times when you're like, oh, I'm worse in that area than I used to be.
Yeah.
And being honest with yourself and humble.
Yeah, it's kind of slacking. Yeah. Because that kind of helps with the integrity too.
Yeah.
That's all around I was kind of is this related to integrity? It kind of goes back to integrity. If I'm focused on my journey and focus on my growth in a certain skill set, I'm not worried about who's seeing me do it.
Yeah.
I'm the one seeing it, Yeah,
if you compare yourself to yourself,
right,
you're much less likely to be worried about what other people think about you.
Right. You can use that as a metric, like the person who's better than you, and say that's who I want to be like in the future, but here's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Kind of grow towards it.
And that's where going back, we talked about, I think in the first or second episode, the idea of taking personality tests to learn who you are. Strength finders.
Yeah.
Part of that is personality. So for me, one of the top strengths that popped up the first time I took it was competitor or competitive.
Yeah.
And that part of how I grow is having somebody to go against.
I can see that.
And so for me personally, it helps me if I have somebody that I'm I have to kind of let's keep I hit a milestone, they go a little bit further. I'm like, I got to keep going.
Yep.
So for me personally, there's a drive there that comes from competition that is helpful.
Okay.
That's one of the areas where it's I think I'm at a spot where it's I think I would from a scheduling time perspective, it's not realistic right now. But I'm like, I'd love to work out at the gym with somebody.
Yeah.
And to have that little bit of competitive edge, especially somebody that's like just a little bit better than me.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody that's like lifting twice as much as I do, because that's kind of discouraging. But somebody that's like, oh no, they've been doing this a little longer, they're a bit more consistent, and I'll be like, oh, I have something I can push for.
I like that. Yeah.
So that's where like competition can be good.
That's good.
Is when it drives you to be better.
Yeah.
But again, coming back to like, you can't ever be about putting the other person down.
That's good.
It's about driving yourself to be better, not about putting other people down.
And you can encourage someone like, hey, I've gone through that journey. Yeah. Like looking back, you know, if I'm the worker 20 years from now, I can look back and say, hey, I went through that journey. Here's some tips and tricks that helped me.
Yeah.
Maybe keep them from going 20 years in the journey. Maybe it's a 10-year journey for them, kind of thing. So
yeah,
you could help somebody, but don't look down.
Yeah. And I think the journey aspect of that is really important, that we're not, I would say this, I think with quite a bit of confidence, I believe like this 98%, where it's like, I don't think anybody alive today on earth lives in 100% integrity all of the time.
That's good. Yeah.
Now there are some people that are pretty dang close.
Yeah.
And those are the people who are like worth looking up to.
Yeah.
But as far as like, I mess up, people mess up.
Yeah.
We don't live in the way that like, we don't live aligned with the things that we say we believe all the time.
That's true.
And so I think it's important to remember that, and to know that living in integrity is a goal and a standard that we shoot for, but to not be discouraged when we don't always hit it.
That's good.
Now, also, don't let yourself fall into the trap of being like, if I'm never going to hit it, then I might as well not try.
Yeah.
Because that is like a trap.
Yeah.
And it's the thing is living in integrity, it's not that you will never hit being integrity. It's more so of like, are you going to be there 100% of the time? So it's like, there are times when you're in integrity and times you're out of integrity. Very rarely is it a time when it's like, I'm never being in integrity at all, unless you're just literally not trying to. Does that make sense?
What do you mean by that 100% of the time? Like, because if you're a person of integrity, I would think that you're going to be, I don't know, you're going to be in there more than you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's fair.
Flukes.
Yeah.
Whatever. Failures.
No, I think that's fair to be like, if you are like, I think it is attainable to live there more often than not.
Yeah.
So I think that is attainable. Okay. What I would say is, so say you're, to put arbitrary numbers to this, just to help with the analogy and understanding this.
Yeah.
If you were living in integrity 80% of the time, you have room to get better.
Yeah. That's fair.
But you don't need to be discouraged about that 20%. And I'd say even more so if you're in integrity like 95+% of the time. And then that 5% of the time, you shouldn't be like, I'm beating myself up over that 5%.
Yeah.
You should be aware of it. You should be working to grow in it. But I think especially for if you're in that like growing up from 50, so 50, 60, 70 plus, you're getting, you're growing in your ability to have integrity and to live that way, that when you aren't living in the way that you know you shouldn't beat yourself up over it. Instead, you should be like, nope, I want to do better. So I'm going to keep working on this.
Yeah. You bounce back. Yeah. You focus back on what you know to be true.
And so kind of with this, like wrapping it up, one of the questions I have for like all of our listeners and for us, and I'd be curious, like, Kyle, are you open to sharing like just one small area where you're maybe like not living in integrity that you want to right now?
I'd say it's physical wellness as a general subject.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of aspects that lives out. It's like, I want to be a fit person. And I know that stretching is good because as I, rounded to 30 and I'm in my 30s, stretching is good just to stay limber and flexible. I know that for a fact. I know that's truth.
Yeah.
I just don't live that out. I don't stretch as much. So I'm trying to do better at that. Started today of just stretching 10 minutes before going to work.
Okay.
It feel a lot better today. So
sweet.
Day one of one.
Okay.
And then like other aspects of going to the gym regularly, consistently, instead of once or twice a week, going more 3 or 4 times a week would be good, or doing something physical.
So it's like, so you're not doing that.
I'm not doing that. Right.
And you want to be.
Yeah.
So the question that I have is, so that's the first question is like, what areas of your life are you not living in integrity? So that's a question for you right now. So you're this area of physical wellness, but I want to ask like the people at home too, what area in your life are you not living in integrity? What area in your life are you talking the talk, but not walking the walk? Yeah. 'Cause I think it's important to like call out those things and to really like sit down and be like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this, even though I think I should be, or know it's right to be doing
First
this.
step's realizing it, right? First step's admitting it.
Yeah. First step is awareness.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then here's the question that I'm going to say it in a couple different ways to hopefully help you understand it, is like, if you started living in integrity in that area, right now, what would you lose? So right now you get something from not living in integrity, and you would lose that if you started it. Another way of putting it is like, it must benefit you to live out of integrity right now.
Yeah.
So what are you gaining from this lack of integrity? Like for the personal wellness
for
right now?
My specific implication, I guess, is the lack of time. I give up that time, that hour in the gym 3 or 4 times a day instead of 2 hours at the gym a week.
Yeah, so there's like,
it becomes 4 hours a week.
Yeah, so you're looking at like 4 hours a week.
Right.
10 minutes a day. So you're looking at an hour a week of stretching.
Yeah. Yeah. So it adds up to 5-6 hours a week easily with, taking a shower, if I have something else happening, changing clothes, all that good stuff. So,
yeah. So time is the big thing that you feel.
I think that's losing. It. Yeah.
And it may be different for you. So like, I think, so say you also are like, the physical side of things, not working out, not eating, whatever it is. And you're like, for me, I would say like eating well is an area where I'm like not living in integrity. Like where it's like, I started really hard a couple weeks ago and I'm like not doing that very well.
So what do you gain from?
And so for me, it's comfort.
Yeah. Okay.
Of like, and just convenience and
the pleasure of the food.
Pleasure.
Tastes good. Yeah.
Yeah. It tastes good. I want to have something sweet.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And so, and the other side of it a little bit for me is like the inconvenience of doing things healthily, where it's like right now, when I don't think about what I eat, it's easy.
Yeah.
And when I have to think about what I eat, it's hard.
Yep.
And so I want the easy
Takes effort. Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, for me, it's like what I gain by keeping in with, like by not living in integrity, is ease and convenience and pleasure.
Yeah.
Those are things that I get from not eating well.
Yeah.
And like right now, it's like it's a battle to be like, am I willing to give those things up to have this greater thing that I know is better, that will make me healthier in the long run?
Yeah. Right.
And so I think it's important to realize as you think through this, what are the things that you're like, you get from living that way? Because that also helps you like evaluate. Because the other side of this question is, what do you start to get if you do live in integrity that way? Like what's the benefit of, like you said, working out 3 to 4 times a week and stretching? Like what are the benefits that you get from that?
More energy in the day. You work out, you get more energy, you sleep better at night, feel more rested, and just a longer life. I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
Yeah.
Like working out and
There's
stretching.
A podcast I listened to a couple months ago with this health guy nutritionist, and basically he said that one of the most important factors for longevity of life is that you walk at least 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And that if you just do that, you're likely to live longer.
So.
And then he said, and then it's like, and if you lift and eat well on top of that, it just even better and better.
Just compounds.
But yeah, so if you want to live a little bit longer, walk at least 20 minutes a day.
All right.
And you really have to cross that 20-minute threshold.
Yeah.
And then, there's the other sides of it too. But
just a fuller life. You're not like in pain. I can't walk up the stairs. You can't do hiking, see cool sights on mountains. I want to do that into my 50s, 60s. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And so for me, what I would gain by eating in a healthy way, and here's my personal issue that I have to work through. I don't feel better when I eat well.
Oh yeah? Okay.
And not that I feel bad. It's more so I don't feel bad when I eat poorly.
Okay.
So a lot of people are like, I just feel better when I eat healthy food. Yeah. And I'm like, I feel the same. So that's not a factor for me.
All right.
I wish it was kind of. I wish it was. I wish I felt bad when I ate unhealthy food, because then I'd have more incentive to eat healthy food. So that's not my thing. Yeah. For me, the big thing that I want is, I don't want to be like, I have some extra fat that I don't want.
Okay.
And so I would be more slim, more toned, if I like eat well. So I have been working out fairly consistently for a while. Before the baby came, I was working out 5 days a week, for 3 months straight. And so I was very consistent, and I didn't really see any body change because I wasn't really focused on eating at all. And diet is like a lot of the percentage. I think it's about 80% of your like physical appearance is based on what you eat, not on what you do.
Oh wow. Okay.
So there's 20% that is what you do, but it's but if you're eating poorly and working out a lot, you're not gonna look that much different.
Yeah. Dirty bulk is not a thing.
Not really. Not. I mean, sure, it works, but you got to cut still.
Yeah.
You can dirty bulk and then just look fat, and if you don't cut, then you're just going to stay fat.
Yeah.
So yes, dirty bulking works in that sense where you gain mass.
In mass, yeah.
But if you don't cut, it's not going to make a change either way. So there's still a dietary element to that. Like
Gotcha.
Even bulking and cutting involves a dietary change of cutting at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
That causes like the final physical product that you're like, yes, I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like my physical appearance a little bit of like, I'm not like ashamed of how I look, but I'm not happy with how I look. I think that's where I'm at right now. Where I'm like, I could be better, and I want to be better. Some of it is the element of like being able to, like, this is more on the working out side of things, but being physically fit. And there's an element too of looking physically fit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Where it's like I want to like look how I feel, and if I feel physically fit, I want to look that way.
Yeah.
As well, because it's like kind of discouraging to go to the gym like for that 3 months, 5 days a week, lifting pretty heavy, going, and then look the same. I'm like, what is with this? That's frustrating.
Right. You want to see some results, see some muscles.
And so, I want to see being trimmed down. So that's for me of like for that area specifically.
Yeah.
Kind of like, why is it worth it? It's like it benefits. And then there is the other side of it too, where I have to be aware of it. And this is like the things that I don't think about in the moment that I probably should think about more. My family has a history of like heart disease. So like my granddad had a heart attack when he was 60. My dad had a heart attack when he was 50. So I should pay attention to what I eat.
Yeah.
And so
there's 40.
So there's that. Yeah. No, thanks.
Yeah.
So there's that reality that I need to be aware of. And that if I want to be healthy for the long term, I need to eat healthy.
Yeah.
And I forget that in the moment, which is why I eat what I eat without thinking about it. It's because that's not on my mind.
Right.
And that's honestly more important than how I look.
Okay.
As far like just like saying
healthy.
Like,
yeah, I'm with you.
Not having a heart attack is more important than having a little less fat.
Right.
Like that just like the black and white statement there. And so like for me, I need to grow in holding in front of me that like better long-term best thing. And I think that's why that second question is there. So it's like first question is like, where are you out of integrity right now? Second one is like, what's keeping you there? Like, what do you like about it? And third one is like, why should you change?
That's good.
And for me, the answer of why should I change is because it's like, that's what's going to enable me to be healthy for the long run.
I should have said be a dog on the pickleball court. I should have said that because that's what I truly want to be.
You're like, I want to be a dog.
I want to be somebody. Yeah. I don't want to be the worst one on the pickleball court, put it that way.
Yeah.
But that's the short term. The long term is to be, able to have camping trips with my family.
Yeah.
50, 60 years old. So play with the grandkids,
Yeah. So I want, like, if you're listening to this, I want you to ask those questions. Where am I out of integrity right now? What's keeping me from living integrity? What do I like about living the way that I'm living right now? And what is the better thing that can help me to live in integrity in the future? Because here's the thing is humans are incentive and reward based beings. It's just a reality. We don't like it. We want to be altruistic and just do things because we're supposed to do them and it's good for us. We don't. We do things because there are things in front of us that we can get and achieve. And so we got to like recognize that about human nature and then set things in front of us that are like, I want this better thing. And so this is what I need to work toward. And that's why it's better to do this now instead of this other thing that doesn't help me towards that.
Yeah. So it might take some time to think it out.
Yeah.
It'll probably take some time. Yeah, but it's good to identify it.
So work through those questions. Spend some time journaling it. It'll definitely be worth it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think we covered it all pretty well. Can't think of any.
Be a person of integrity. It's worth it. It's good. It will. John put it this way too, which I really appreciate and liked, is there's nothing that will enhance your influence or limit your influence like integrity.
That's good.
That if you are not a person of integrity, people will not want to work with you. And if you are, people will want to work with you. And like in like most cases, they'll be like, yeah, he's the guy that you want.
Right.
And so like be a person of integrity.
That's good.
And we're on a journey. We're not there. I'm not 100% there. And you don't have to be either. And so like start that process now. Start figuring it out. Start working towards it. It's worth it.
That's good.
Man, thanks for joining us. It's been a great episode. Again, like, share, subscribe, do all those things so that we can connect with more people and help people to hear this idea and this message of living this well-prepared life of embracing responsibility, nurturing growth, and forging resilience. And we'll see you next week.